Thank you for being here. We are very proud to be here and to being able to present you and together with our friends and colleagues these wonderful wines in this magnificent space. I'm here, as Antonio said, with my wife, Elena Brovia. The both of us are the current generation going on with a long family tradition of the Brovia winery making wines. Our wine is Rocche di Castiglione. Rocche di Castiglione is a very, very special vineyard in general in the area, but as well a very, very special vineyard for the winery. My father-in-law, in the history of the winery, there are two big chapters. The beginning of the Brovia family making wines in 1863. Then in the beginning of the 30s, the activity stopped because the father of Jacinto, of my father-in-law, he passed away very young. He was 32 years old. My father-in-law was only 6 years old. And so there was a break, a stop of around 20 years until 1953, where my father-in-law resumed the activity and started making wines again in Castiglione Faleto. In 1953, usually at that period, wineries they can have some vineyards, but in most of the cases the grapes were purchased. In 1953, my father-in-law was able to buy some grapes from Rocche di Castiglione, and he fell in love with that vineyard, with those grapes. In Rocche di Castiglione, we are obviously in Castiglione Faleto. Is one of the characteristics of the vineyard is the ability to give extraordinary, elegant wines, especially if you consider that we are in Rocche, in Castiglione Faleto village. My father-in-law loved elegant wines. He fell in love with that vineyard. But that was at the time as well one of the most important and historical vineyards in the area. But one of his dreams from that year was to buy a plot in Rocche whenever it was possible. In some years later, 15 years later, a friend of my father-in-law that was a kind of negotiant for grapes, for land in the area, he was a very close friend, and he came to visit my father-in-law, telling him that that same day had talked to a person that owned a parcel in Rocche di Castiglione, and he made him understand that he may be thinking about selling that plot. Nobody knew that. So my father-in-law obviously knew the area, knew the vineyard, but he didn't know what was exactly the parcel. The problem was that Rocche di Castiglione, again, was very researched vineyard, and so it was risky to go during the day with daylight to see what was the plot, because if other people had seen my father-in-law there looking around, they would have usually suddenly understood that that plot was maybe on sale, and maybe the price would have risen up, and so it was risky and maybe difficult to buy the plot. So they had to wait someday until there was full moon. So they went with this friend during the night to identify what was the plot. So they identified the plot. The day after, they went to visit and to talk to the owner. They went already in the vineyard. They shake hands. They made the deal, just shaking hands. Then some people saw them, but it was already late, because at that moment, in that year, in that period, shaking hands was it's not like today that even a contract with the best possible lawyer can be issued. And at that moment, if you shake hands, that was it. So that was in 1968. It was the first important vineyard that my father-in-law bought. And so for these reasons, not only for the characteristics of the vineyard, but for these historical and personal reasons, that Rocche di Castiglione is very special for us. One of the characteristics of Rocche di Castiglione, as I told you, is the finesse. So another, just to give you an example about what was the importance and what was already considered decades ago as such a special vineyard. In the 50s, in the 60s, the Barolo was traditionally made blending. And so, as I told you, the market of the grapes was very important because many wineries basically and mainly bought grapes from different positions. Usually, the price of the grapes was related to the sugar degree. As Alessandro told just before, some minute ago, it was difficult to raise certain sugar levels. And so the higher sugar degree the grapes had, the usually more expensive were the grapes. Rocche di Castiglione was an exception because usually we have lower sugar degrees because of the characteristics of the soil. By the way, we have some parts of Rocche with a very big percentage of sand. We arrived to 66% of sand, especially in the lower part of Rocche di Castiglione. But they were so expensive because many wineries in their blend, they wanted not just to add alcohol and power, but to give a little bit of elegance and complexity to the wine. That is one of the characteristics of Rocche. Okay, I hope you
Perfect, thank you.
enjoy the wine.